In this weekly workout, we're going to dissolve through the pelvis, the hips, and the quad. So to begin, as you settle in, what I want you to try to make sure of is that you're lining up the centers of the ankles, knees, and hip joints. And one of the easiest ways to check that is to stand with the feet parallel, and then from the heel, pivot the toes inward on one foot, and you should be able more or less to touch the arch of the other foot, and then pivot it back out to parallel. Now, this can feel a little narrow sometimes, and you may find that you won't sit as low in your stance when you're doing this real hip width or side channel width stance. That's okay. And especially here, what we want to try to feel as you're settling in with the leg alignments and the joints is that the centers of the ankles and knees come right up almost inside the bowl of the pelvis, inside the bones of the pelvis. This is going to get the quad in line with the centers of the joints, and that's what we want to go for. So we'll work on feeling the quad today, really think of it as in the bowl of the pelvis, at least width-wise. That's what you want to start to look for. So if you even place the hands on the outside of the hips, find where those pelvic bones are. And then feel into that, inside that, just in that inguinal fold, or as we stand, we're going to go deeper into the bowl of the pelvis and into on those side channels to find the quad. So that's what we'll be working towards. As you settle in for one more minute here, just try to let the basic structural aspects of this alignment come together before we start to go and dissolve. And once you start to feel where the quad is in line with the hips and the knees, this can give you an indication of the side channels all the way up through the torso as well. So to whatever degree as you're standing, it feels like there's twisting in the spine or in the rib cage or in the shoulder girdle, try to gently rotate and turn the body so it comes into alignment with the quad, with the hip joints. So all the way from the armpit, through the midriff, through the quad, you get a sense on the left side and the right side of the body of the internal alignments cohering and coming together. This is different than the outer muscles, the tissue, the joints, or even any visual cueing. If somebody were looking at you and adjusting you, try to find an internal sense of cohesion through those deep lines of the body. And as you're standing with the side channel width and those side channel alignments, just make sure that the shoulder girdle isn't compressing down onto the rib cage. And if you just pull the blades back, just lift the collarbone off the ribs, that sense of the side channels supporting you will continue up through the neck, through the crown of the head, to get you a nice light lift through the whole body. So just feeling the crown of the head now. We're going to dissolve through the whole torso, including the arms simultaneously, height by height. But let's just settle at the crown of the head for a minute and get the mind dialed into the right frequency for dissolving. And now starting to come down. Everything at each height. Through the forehead, the temples, the third eye, and the eyes. You'll discover kind of a natural pace so that you don't feel like you're rushing ahead with the mind and you don't feel like you're stagnating or getting stuck. And this is going to vary a little bit every time you practice, but so we'll sort of go together. But when you practice solo without the audio, notice what pace your body can easily move through your mind can easily move through the body with. Especially at these early ones, every time you feel the mind getting sucked deeper into a spot, into one area, let it relax. Feel the space around it, and it'll naturally start to dissolve instead of contract. Coming down through the jaw, the occiput, and the roof of the mouth. Relaxing the back of the skull as you feel the space where the skull sits on top of your spine. And then piece by piece through the neck and throat, through the rest of the jaw and the mouth. And if you feel the space around you simultaneously with whatever you're feeling in the body, it gets much easier to not only let the dissolving happen, but to feel a whole cross-section of the body at once instead of the individual places. And you will feel the gates eventually stand out in a different way from the rest of the body at that height. That's how you start to learn about the gates. You feel the whole cross-section, and then you notice the gates are more prominent or connected in a different way. You'll have different qualities depending on how you feel things. So let's come down all the way through the base of the neck now, and into the chest and shoulders and all of the vertebrae at each height, whatever height you're getting to. And if you feel like the mind drifts too much, or at a certain height it's too diffuse, there's too much to feel, it's too hard to feel, use the gates as sort of like anchor points for your mind. Come onto one gate, one place, like between the shoulder blades, on the spine, and let the mind sort of regroup and recollect, refocus, so that the dissolving gets stronger again. And you can slowly start to let more from that height back into your awareness. Coming down the rest of the way through the rib cage, all the vertebrae at that height. As you get to the bottom of the rib cage, feel the elbows as well. Now down through the belly, through the forearms, and through the lumbar spine. In the belly, you're sort of feeling the whole container, the whole sack of internal organs, but then also moving through it at slice by slice, top to bottom, trekking along the spine as well as you go. And just take a second to stabilize the mind at the lower dantian and mingmen. Same height, right in the center of the body, and then Mingmen corresponding on the spine. Now, we want to start this process of dissolving the hips, the pelvis, and the qua with the bones of the pelvis. That includes basically two large bones, everything from the front of the pelvis where they meet, the wings of the pelvis, the hip sockets, and then they connect to the sacrum in the back. And if you've got the mind sort of centered in the lower dantian still, and if you feel the bones of the pelvis, you want to sort of hold your mind on them in the same way you would if you were sensing and holding and feeling the energy between the palms. So just see from the lower dantian or with the mind at that height, if you can feel the two big bones of the pelvis without trying to drill your awareness into them or squeeze or contract or hold. Just feel the two, and if we do this for a little bit, you might be able to start to feel the energy of the bones themselves and let that dissolve. So everything from the front, the sides, and the back, including the hip socket, the hip joint. We'll work on the anus, the genitals, the perineum separately. So don't worry about that now. Instead, from the bones of the pelvis, just feel onto the side channels, feel inward until you can start to see if you can feel the qua and the gate that controls the qua energetically, which is at the center of the qua. So it's the part where if you were doing a squat and hollowing inward, softening the qua to achieve the squat, the part in the in the center that you'd feel like you'd be drawing into, that's where you want to look for the gate. So as you're standing here without moving up and down, just see if you can start to find the center of your qua and the gate at the center that governs the qua. And when you're working on the two sides of the qua simultaneously, you probably will notice differences on the left and right. And not just in the tissue, right? Shortened or contracted on one side, stiffer on the other side. It's fine to notice stuff like that. We want to get underneath that. We want to get behind it to the energy that governs those areas. So if you feel the physical sensations, don't be drawn into them, just feel them. And by feeling them and paying attention to them without getting stuck in them, you start to get a glimpse of what's behind them. And that's the energy that is sort of controlling them that will begin to release. And if you're getting the qua to release, and things are starting to let go, you might find that naturally realigns or amplifies, strengthens the feeling along the left and right side channels. That's good. So with that sense of letting go, now let's just drop everything from the qua. Let the sensation of the weight of the body fall into the thighs, into the legs. And start that sense of sinking, heaviness, and saturation to get you to move down. Down through the knees, and around the knees. If it feels collapsed, remember, just lift from the back of the knee. But from the front of the knee and the knee in general, we want a sense of letting go, dropping, letting the weight fall. So the sense of drop through the shins, the calves, down into the ankles. and opening down through the feet. So just take a second, let everything in the legs, the weight of the legs, fall through the joints, fall through the structure. Again, this underlying structure is going to make better dissolving possible. This is going to facilitate everything that we want to let go of and release. Opening the feet out and softening our connection down to the floor. Yeah. Good.